Mrs McArthur.
Thank you, President. Well, Minister, this is a disgrace. This is not a balanced approach. This is favouring prisoners over the rest of the public and especially the victims of crime. This is not fair, it is unjust, and you should rectify it. And you should apologise to all the victims who are so aggrieved by what has happened, with prisoners who have caused such damage to individuals and loved ones to be let out of prison early because of the pandemic. Now, the whole of Victoria was locked up half the time for 23 hours a day. They haven't been compensated. I don't think the staff in the prison system were compensated either, but the prisoners seem to have benefited from this thing. This is a plan, a project that was introduced by the Kerner government in 1991 to replace the abolition of automatic remissions being applied to sentences. Much like the situation we find ourselves in 1991, the Victorian community had lost faith in the sentencing as prisoners were being granted an automatic reduction of a third of their sentence. In other words, a prisoner could be sentenced for 12 years with a non-parole period of 9 but be out in 6. When Labor wiped out remissions and introduced emergency management days in 1991, they said, "Both the public and judiciary have expressed their concern regarding the length of sentences of imprisonment imposed by the courts and the actual time served by prisoners, especially where a serious crime is involved." And we have victims of crime in the chamber today whose loved ones have been so affected by criminals that are going to be let out of jail early. It is not right, Minister, and you need to redress this situation immediately. When introducing the legislation in 1991, which sought to remove remissions and introduce emergency management days, the then Labor Attorney-General, Mr Kennan, said, "This policy recognises the public has a right to know what period of imprisonment will be served by a person who receives a prison sentence in a Victorian court. It is no longer acceptable to the Victorian public that administrative interventions like remissions and early release should reduce the period fixed as the minimum term by a sentencing judge." However, that is exactly what is happening now, with victims of crime in Victoria and their loved ones finding out there is a prospect some prisoners will be released earlier than their minimum sentence thanks to an EMD. Now, Minister, this is not acceptable. You have to do something about it. We all suffered under the egregious restrictions that were placed on us by the Andrews Labor government during a pandemic. Worse lockdowns than anywhere else in the world. Yet it seems the only people that are being compensated in this state for that approach are prisoners. Prisoners who have been convicted of shocking crimes of murder. How can you possibly let this happen? They cannot be released early while the victims suffer. You must do something about this. It is absolutely terrible, and it is so unfair on the victims of crime who are with us today and all those in the rest of Victoria who are bearing the brunt of this ridiculous policy that you allowed to happen, and now the victims of crime are paying the price. Why should a prisoner get out of jail so early because of the pandemic, where you locked everybody else up for 23 out of 24 hours a day in Melbourne? Nowhere else in the world were there such restrictions, and yet not the staff in your prisons, not the general public, but the prisoners are the ones that are going to benefit from the fact that there were lockdowns in this state. And you have to redress this situation. You have to apologise to the people in this chamber, to the rest of the people in Victoria who are so affected by this shocking situation. And it is just terrible that Renee has had to gather these signatures, like 6,000 signatures that she's collected and 20,000 on a change.org petition. 20,000 people in this state concerned about this issue. You must listen and you must act.